What's going on? Excited for this conversation. It is football season. Topic that I like talking about is team collecting. I've been following today's guest for a while. He curates an amazing collection of Rams cards. I'm joined by Preston. You might know him at Preston's Cards on Instagram. Today's topic is when you make team collecting your North Star. But without further ado, Preston, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Brett? Appreciate you having
I
me on.
Yeah, man, it's football season, so
It is.
I think it's a good time. I know probably for both of us, like it's not exactly how we want it to be going so far, but
It's
it's a long season. How are you feeling about your Rams?
you know, it feels like I'm watching like a one of those hospital shows right now with all these injuries. I mean, it was Donald retired and I was like, that's fine. And then after week 1 it was just downhill. So I'm trying to hang in there.
I so the last time the Rams came to town, it was last year actually. Rams came to Indy,
Yeah.
and dude, I was like, I don't know, man. Watching that offense when they're, at full stride, I was literally watching Stafford just like laser passes to Puka. And I was like, who is this guy? He's everywhere. And
Yeah.
Cup was out. So I don't know, like, is there a part of you that's like knowing that you're enduring a lot of injuries, knowing that like with McVay, with Stafford, with some of those pieces, when healthy, you probably have like the highest octane offense in the league? Like, are you still like optimistic about that when the pieces are in place?
Yeah, 100%. I think the team made a lot of great offseason moves. They like upgraded the O line. They lost a few defensive guys, but I think overall, like they added Tre'Davious White at corner from Buffalo. I think that helps a lot. He's a great vet. I think the team really like was in a position to be a playoff team, 100% a playoff team. I even had them potentially making the Super Bowl, with like a Puka and a healthy Cup, and it's just like it's unfortunate. I definitely think they bounce back from this after the bye week, but it's going to be tough, I think, for a playoff run.
Where does your passion for the Rams come from? I know we were talking ahead of it, and you're from the area. It
Yeah.
almost seems like anyone from the area though has like a lot of options, and people are fans of a lot of different teams. How did you become a Rams fan?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd always been into football. Football was always my sport since I was young, but I never really had a team. The Rams weren't out here yet post 20 or pre 2016 about that. It was like the Chargers, and I wasn't crazy about them, but I was really young. I didn't know what was going on. I used to root for like my entrance to football was like Peyton Manning on the Broncos, watching those Super Bowls. Like I was rooting for the quarterbacks, Russell Wilson on the Seahawks, those Super Bowls. I was just rooting for whoever was good that year. I remember Newton on the Panthers, Super Bowl 50, but they came here in 2016. I was still young. I was probably like 13, but I was like, oh, I have a team finally. So for me, it was Todd Gurley. When I saw him playing, it was like my mind was blown. I'm like, I see this guy doing insane hurdles and he's just running all over these people. And I still don't understand like the true concept of what was going on because I was young. I'm just watching football, but I'm like, this is awesome. Like seeing like Gurley and this the offense. I'd say I finally came around to it maybe around the Patriots Super Bowl, Rams Patriots 2018-19. I kind of like I understood what was going on. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I'd always been into cards since I was young. I used to collect Garbage Pail Kids. I used to collect wrestling. I still do. But I never really touched on sports cards. I go to my LCS for boxes, and kind of one thing led to another. The hobby kind of started booming again around that 2020 era, and I got into it right before that. I like the Rams, so I was like, combine the two. I went in, I bought like hundreds of base Aaron Donald cards, thinking I was like, it was the next great thing. I still have them to this day. Um, and I think from there, it kind of just took off. It was COVID. It was like I had a lot of free time. I was spending like hours a day on Card Ladder, just looking at sales and graphs and everything possible to kind of like become educated more on the hobby. And I think it kind of just took off from there.
So you mentioned Garbage Pail, you mentioned wrestling.
Yeah.
I've seen those in places on your page, but primarily, like I view you as a Rams collector, and I can relate with kind of that where I collect the Colts, but then I collect wrestling too, and there's some other areas. Like, how do you balance kind of your budget and your activity on kind of where you allocate funds and how you collect?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I'll say one thing is it's tough to not get distracted because I'm in a place with my Rams collecting where I'm really after very specific things. Like if I see a gold Prizm of like one of our random players from over the years pop up, I'm not gonna like grab it right away. I'm looking for the finite. I'm looking for the super fractor. I'm to a point where like I have to be specific, otherwise I'd have 10 briefcases full of like who knows what. And then yeah, with trying to balance out my other collection, I have like random finites of other football guys from the 2010s. I have like random gold PSA 10 rookies of like JJ Watt, like just like random things. So trying to balance is definitely tough. I'd say it all comes back to me for focusing on the Rams PC first. Number one, it's also gonna be the priority, the Rams, the Aaron Donald stuff. And then if I'm really in a kind of a dry zone with that, I'll kind of focus my my attention to some of the other stuff, whether it be wrestling, whether it be other random 2010s football kind of stuff that I enjoy.
So I want to spend some time talking about Aaron Donald, but before
Yeah.
we do that, finding focus is one of the biggest challenges I think in the hobby. And sometimes we think like, oh, I collect my team, I found focus, but you can team collect and there could be zero focus and you
Yeah.
could just be buying stuff. So what was the moment where you got to the point where you were just like, okay, I know the types of cards that I like or want to pursue, and you became disciplined on sticking to those specific lanes?
Yeah. So I'd say that on my IG page, I made a post when Donald retired, essentially, kind of showing my Donald collection, like the history of it from like when I first started, and it was like 10 base cards and like regular refractors to when I was just buying whatever to kind of consolidating down. I'd say it was probably around this Bengals Rams Super Bowl. At that time, I had my first big ever Donald card was his 2018 NT Shield 1/1 auto, and if you know Donald, he has like 5 shields maybe ever. So it was a huge card. I had it, and then I got it for like a crazy cheap price. I moved it. I made a good amount on it, and I kind of used those funds to kind of be like, okay, like going forward, I need to like really lock in on like what I'm collecting. I started going after a lot of like a big thing for me is like gold PSA 10s, low pop, whether it be Prizm, whether it be rookie, Topps Chrome, Finest, Platinum, going after that kind of stuff, which is still something I do. I'd say it was around that Super Bowl where I kind of realized like going forward, like I kind of I gotta choose some things, otherwise it's gonna get out of control.
How do you make the decision? Because it seems like very intentional. There, Aaron Donald doesn't have that many shields. You
Yeah.
grabbed one and then had the foresight to say, okay, I got this probably for a lot cheaper than the market demanded. But like giving that card up, which I assume you really liked it, but knowing that this will lead to probably more cards in your collection that you might appreciate more. Like, talk us through that decision making.
Yeah, so well, when I acquired it, it was actually I got the entire rainbow. So that year it was the colossal set. And essentially it was the shield. It was 2 swooshes, the 1/2 and the 2/2, and then it was like the out of 10 and out of 99. So it was a time where I was like, okay, I could like it's an awesome card. It was probably it was my favorite at the time. But I was fine parting ways, knowing I still had the shield, I still had the swooshes, I still had the out of 10, the out of 99, and it's kind of funny because I don't know. I own one of those. I own like the out of 10 to this day. I sold the swooshes. I sold the out of 99. But at the time, I'd say it was definitely more of a financial decision to put more money into cards rather than a passion kind of thing. And it's kind of crazy because looking at it now, it's like I'd rather have the one big card than the 10 smaller cards. But I kind of I guess at the time I felt like it was a good value. They just won the Super Bowl. I sold off a lot of stuff around then, which I don't regret. I have the stuff I want to this day. I kept a lot of it. But I guess, yeah, it was more of a financial decision to put more money into other stuff.
That makes sense. Want to spend a minute talking, maybe more than a minute, but talking about Aaron Donald. I made a
Yeah.
comment recently that I was watching Red Zone and the Rams were on, and the defense was playing, and instantly, this was this year. Instantly, I just felt the loss of Aaron Donald, and it just something didn't seem right. It was like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know he's retired, but not seeing him out there, and to me, like I reflected on that, and I was like, man, if that's not the mark of a great player, I don't know what is. I mean, his accolades, accomplishments speak for itself. Obviously, Super Bowl champion on top of everything. The moment in the Super Bowl where he sacks Burrow and kisses his ring, it's like iconic. I
Yeah.
think like real football heads know that like Aaron Donald was arguably like you got Brady, but like he's like in that conversation to me of this era of like greatest football players
100%.
ever.
Yeah.
But he plays a position that maybe isn't the most collectible. So like how you're obviously a fan and you obviously probably watched him more than anyone, know how freaking good this guy is. Like, how do you balance like what you know about him and maybe his long-term collectability and legacy that he's going to have in sports with like attacking his cards and building your collection, knowing that maybe probably right now is the maybe not right now, but like towards the end of his career was maybe the best time to buy his cards?
Yeah. So I'd say that something I'm really into is knowing about what's out there. Like, what are my options to buy, right? If you go into like my Google Drive, I probably have 10 spreadsheets of like every single Aaron Donald card out there that I could possibly buy and where I rank them and photos of them. So it was definitely like it's very tough to gauge his market because it's being a defensive player compared to QB. It's like he doesn't get as much respect from, I'd say, not only like the football world, but almost like the card companies too, Panini and Topps. They never really they like he had like one, maybe two RPAs, right? Like you look at a QB, they have like 50, it seems like nowadays. So definitely for me, it's about knowing what's out there, like, kind of gauging my options. And then I kind of started recently. My goal has been going after, I think I mentioned earlier, but like gold PSA 10 rookie kind of stuff. I really enjoy low pop. I love his like 2014, like the finest, the platinum, the Topps Chrome, the Bowman Chrome. And then in terms of his non-rookie, it's really just going about iconic one-on-ones for me. Whether it be like I have two of his Nebulas, his 2020 first year Nebula and his 2021. Those are two of like my favorite cards in my collection, even more so the 2020. So again, that's like if I didn't know what was out there and I was just kind of like, playing it by looking at eBay listings and buying whatever, I don't think my collection would be as organized as it is. Yeah, so there's the 2021 there. So I probably got that one. Yeah, so back in 2022, I got that, graded it, PSA 9. Super awesome card. And it was one of my biggest one-on-ones at the time. And then even more recently, I ended up getting the first year, the 2020.
I have never what are your thoughts on the Prizm Mosaic? Obviously Nebula one of one. It's Mosaic generally is a newer product, but what drew
Yeah.
you to these cards specifically?
So I'll say, so in terms of like Donald collecting, and it's something that is like that the Donald collector knew very well is for years, my good friend Nick, who AD collector on IG, he had all the finites. So everyone kind of knew it was like no one's getting these. Like look elsewhere. Like I mean, props to him. He's like one of the biggest inspirations for my collection, though. A great friend who and he moved this one to me, the 2020 recently. But it was kind of like look elsewhere. Like you have to look towards Select. I had to look towards his Optic, his Mosaic, and that was another thing. Like his Optic gold vinyls were all like one dude has them. It's like his Select. It's like we're kind of spread out, but I'm not as crazy about it. And Mosaic is kind of really the one that I locked into because to me this the Nebula look of these cards is just so iconic to me, especially the first year here, 2020. I almost view it as like a I know it's a big comparison, but like to a first year Prizm, to a 2016 Optic first year. I think that in terms of, I don't want to say like holdability over the years, but this set 2020 Mosaic, especially like the one of ones, it ranked very high for me. Like this is up there for me with his Prizm finites from any given year aside from rookie. I mean, I might be a little biased because I own it, but I think it's a great looking card.
It is. I've never owned a Nebula anything, but have always appreciated the Nebula look. I think they're very appealing. Talk about the community component where you've got other Donald collectors who you admire, look up to. I'm sure trade back and forth, sell, share
Yeah.
information. Like, how important has the community component been to like your overall Donald collecting?
I'd say it's honestly it's been everything. I mean, especially through social media now being such a huge platform for cards. Even more so Instagram. I'm in like a collector chat with like 10 of the biggest Donald collectors, and anytime something pops up, it's like a link is sent. Anytime news comes out about a Donald card, it's sent. We buy and sell back and forth to each other, give each other like priority when buying and selling to keep cards within like our own group. And it's been huge because I mean, I'd say a majority of my collection has been acquired from other Donald collectors. And it kind of just it keeps us all in the loop and updated with what's going on with his stuff, and it keeps his cards within like the hobby, right? Like we'll try to sell to each other first before moving elsewhere, because I mean it's happened and you never see the card again. Um, so I'd say I put an emphasis on like the community, especially like I have a tight knit group of like Aaron Donald collector guys. Like I'm so thankful for that group and like the communication and the openness of everyone. Like it's a huge help to collecting him.
Okay, so I got a big one on the screen here, which I saw this was in position 1 on your profile, and I was like, I got to talk with Preston about this one. But this is the 2014 Topps Platinum RPA Super Fractor of Aaron Donald. I mean, Aaron Donald rookie card, RPA Super Fractor. It's kind of got all the elements to it. So maybe talk about this card and what it means to your collection.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the card itself, 2014, I believe Donald had maybe 13 superfractors, including everything like his autos, his base. So it was very limited compared to a lot of other players. And in terms of an RPA, he had 2 RPAs in 2014. He had this one, which was his the Topps Platinum, and then he had a Bowman Sterling RPA. I mean, the Sterling is cool, but I mean the Platinum it's a much larger patch. It's more dominant in the market. And then it's just kind of something that like in my opinion it's one of his top rookies. Again, it's like it's a bias thing probably where like obviously I don't think it's as great as his Prizm Finite, his Top Scrum Super, but I think it definitely is up there, especially because we're in a market today where RPAs have become so prominent, especially because of NT, right? National Treasure Shields and flawless RPAs have really pushed not the narrative but like the prestigiousness behind an RPA. I mean, today's some of the top sales today are like RPAs of top QBs, wide receivers. So to me, this is a very iconic card of his because it's the superfractor of it. There are 2 one-of-ones, I believe, from this set. I believe there is a Shield Red, not the Super. I think they're both amazing cards. I'd love to own the other one. It's superfractor versus the red refractor. But overall, I think that it's a very iconic card for him, especially in today's hobby where the RPA plays such a critical role.
I see all of these Donald rookie cards, and I just imagine them at training camp, like where they got these shots. Maybe it's something different, and but I know like Pete, like he was a highly coveted prospect, and
Yeah,
people had big aspirations for him. But I don't think anyone knew he was going to be like
no, yeah.
revolutionary at the position. So like how do you think about like owning a piece like this where it's like, yeah, he had a rookie card, yeah, he had a super fractor, yeah, he had RPAs, but at the time of release of this, like no one could have imagined that he would have one of the greatest defensive player careers of all time. Like, do you think about that kind of stuff when you own something like this?
No, I definitely do, and it's honestly it's a comparison. Like I think about that 2014 class, right? There's guys like Cleo Mack, Odell Beckham were in there, Brandon Cooks, Mike Evans. It was a really really loaded class, and it kind of makes me think like if Donald were say a higher pick in the draft, would he have had way more cards than he did to this day? It's funny because this 24, so these came out as redemptions back in Topps Platinum, and essentially one collector from Pittsburgh had like all of his stuff. He had the Prizm Finite. He had the NT 1 of 1. He had he had this one at some point. I found that out recently, and I kind of just think back to like it kind of goes to show how Donald he wasn't like a highly coveted guy. If one dude had all of his 1 of 1s, it's not like people were like fighting to get them. Sure, eventually he starts getting Defensive Player of the Year awards and his cards kind of start to disperse and spread out, but it's definitely something I think about. Like he was the 13th pick in the draft. If the Rams took him at like I believe they had the number 2 pick that year, if they took him at the number 2, what would his cards have looked like that year?
So we see big cards change hands all the time, but I always think it's fun just in the communities, like what the reaction is when I'm curious. Just obviously, I would, in my opinion, maybe it's because I'm a Prizm simp. I love the finite, but when the finite changed hands and went into Josh's collection, like how do you think about that? Like just as a Donald collector, when a card that big moves from one collector to another.
No, yeah. So Josh is a great friend of mine. I've known him for years now through Card Ladder and just through because he Todd Gurley and some of the Ram stuff. So the finite was actually the rookie finite. That was I kind of I didn't help him out, but like I because I knew Nick and I knew Josh, so kind of
you were the facilitator, were you, Preston? Were you facilitating this?
That Nebula you see up there, I kind of got that from that the 2020.
So there we go.
No, but I mean, no. Josh and Nick, both amazing guys. I'm very happy that the card, the finite and the finest superfractor went into Josh's collection. Because I know in the future, if I ever want to buy them, they're going to be there.
There you go.
But I think it was a huge change in terms of like the Donald collector group. Nick, who had all the finites, he had sold all of them off aside from the 2014. That was his last one. And it really was like, in my opinion, that's his biggest card. I mean, if you know Donald cards, I mean, he has the Topps Chrome Super, he has the Topps Chrome Super Auto and stuff, right? He has like my card, the Patch Auto Superfractor. But especially in today's market, and it kind of goes back to my thing about like how I highly rank my card because of RPAs. It's like I highly rank that the finite because of how finites are in today's card market. In 5-10 years, that could totally flip. His Topps Chrome Superfractor could become his top card, right? I think it was a really great changing of hands for that card. I'm super happy it went to Josh. And it's his biggest card. I mean, I can't say too much more about it.
So I recently and I had never done this before, but I recently sat down and organized every year of Prizm football out and then just ranked all my favorite years. And my number one year that I ranked was 2014. I just think it's for me, it's got everything you want in a card. But then I layer on top of it the finites out of 2014. And I think they're the best finite because it's just the way the design is. So I look at a card like that, when I found out that Josh had purchased it, I just stared at that card for a while. And what washed over me right now was this feeling of, does everyone understand how big of a card that this is going to be in this era of collecting? That's just the first thought I had. And you obviously understand that because you live in this space, but I don't know, do you think just the hobby as a whole or the football card market as a whole understands the impact and contributions that Aaron Donald had on the game right now? And then furthermore, the impact of Prizm and its legacy and what it's going to mean kind of 20 years down the road. So kind of a big question, but I'm curious of your thoughts there.
I think the card market is always, I don't want to say not respected, but the sales for defensive players have never been where they probably should be. Whether it be JJ Watt, TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, Von Miller. I mean, we have so many great generational players over the last 10, 15 years, but their card sales will never hit the peaks of guys like Calvin Johnson, Tom Brady, Moss, even guys like Tyreek Hill nowadays who are playing, current players. And I think that the market, not the market, but the hobby itself is kind of coming to realize, regardless of position, but cards like that, the Prizm Finite is so iconic, right? I feel like in these last few months, I don't know if it's just me, but finites and supers and like nebulas have become like almost like pushed. Like people are really realizing like those are the top cards. I'm seeing them moved a lot. And especially with this Donald finite, like that's his top card. And I think it is something the market, I mean, at least I realize that, or I realize it. I don't know if the hobby necessarily realizes it, but how iconic of a card that will be of he is the top player for defense. He is in the last, generation, possibly, arguably people argue all time. Um, and then when compared to other guys in the last 10 years, it's like he's, one, top two kind of ranked there compared to some of the top QBs. And it's like, sure, this card might not, reach the sale of like a 6 year, like a, when I say 6 year, like a 10th year Tom Brady, Prizm finite, 15th year Tom Brady Prizm finite. Do I think it should be worth more than that? Of course, yeah. But it's kind of something where like I trust that the hobby will down the line kind of become educated on like that space of defensive guys. Yeah, it at the moment and over the last few years, it's been more of a niche collecting thing. But I feel like it's definitely starting to open up. I'm seeing a lot of big defensive cards move hands and be posted, and people are kind of starting to recognize them.
So I'd be remiss to not. I'm talking with you, and I see the Higbee jersey in the background. I'm not sure I've ever met another Tyler Higbee collector. Let's talk about Tyler Higbee. Why him?
Yeah.
Like, I obviously you got the Rams going for you there, but like, talk about your passion for him and why you collect him.
Yeah, so I've always been a fan of the tight end position, and I think it actually started when I was doing fantasy when I was younger. I was doing fantasy football, and tight end was always like the most important to me. I was taking Kelsey every year, and like he was my guy, right? And then when I finally was like kind of like getting into this card space, I really wanted to go after tight ends, but I didn't really have anyone to choose from. And funny enough, what actually sparked it, and it's something that sparks a lot of collecting for me on my side PCs, is meeting the player, right? If I meet the player, I'm like, okay, I want to get their stuff now. So long story short, I'm like at a restaurant with my dad and my little brother. I'm like, oh, I look at this guy to the left of me eating, and I'm like, I actually noticed like the tattoo on his arm, and I'm like, this guy looks really familiar. And I'm probably only like 14 at the time. And it was Tyler Higbee. He came, he sat down, he like talked to us for a second, took some pictures, and like that moment was kind of like, okay, this is the guy I'm gonna go after. This is the guy I'm gonna collect. And a great thing because I mean, if you look at him historically, he is technically, and it's crazy to say because people don't believe this, but he is the greatest tight end in Rams history. The Rams have never had like that notable of a tight end, and he's been with the team since 2016. And I want to say it all started with his rookie finite, his 2016 Prizm rookie finite. I got that one. I think for schooling, it's like the bottom of the page, but I got that one maybe about 2 years ago. Graded it PSA 10, and that kind of set it off for me. I did the whole 2016 rookie rainbow, and then I was like, okay, I got one of them. I'm gonna go after the rest now. So I'd say as much as I.
Do you have all the finites?
I have 3 of the 5. I have 6 of the 10 rookie Prizm golds. I haven't even uploaded all the golds to my showcase yet, but on it's kind of like as great as Donald is, super collecting him to this level was not like a reality for me. It's like I'm 19. I'm not going to be able to afford and really even be able to obtain all of his top cards. With a guy like Higbee, it was like, okay, he's like one of my favorite players. His cards are affordable, and I was able to find them at the time. I'm kind of in a dead space now because I have like all the one-of-ones. But he was really like a player that I focused on, and I still do. He's probably my current favorite Rams player. And it was really just, again, it kind of, for me, it comes back to like collecting niche things, collecting Donald. He was a defensive player. Not many people collect tight ends, right? The only tight ends you hear about now are like people collecting Kelsey and like Kittle. So this kind of collection is like, it's a fun one for me. And it always keeps the hunt going for me.
So this is a topic that comes up with like players like Higbee where maybe they don't have mass appeal and a strong collector base, but like how much fun is it to approach the Higbee collection and be like, I'm gonna go build the best Tyler Higbee collection in the world and be able to do it and afford it?
Yeah, so it's really been for me. It's kind of about I was at the point where I just wanted a few one of ones, and then I said, okay, like this is too easy. Like I need to like make it harder for myself. So I started just kind of going after everything of his I could find. And again, it leads back to the idea that like I think his stuff is really affordable for what I can get compared to other players, right? I mean, if I'm doing this of Donald, it's like like I said before. I mean, it's going to be impossible. So, especially with collecting niche players, I'd say the thing that really keeps me going with this is he is an active player, right? Collecting Donald is amazing, but he's not playing anymore. Higbee is still an active player. He's injured right now, but it's something that I kind of have to look forward to. That is something I like to balance. I know a lot of people talk about, collecting retired players, collecting active players, and for me, it's kind of like I really like that balance of both. I like to have a collection of guys that are retired, have been retired for 15 years, a few years, but I also like a small collection of active guys where I could look at the card and be like, this guy's going out on the field this Sunday. Like, is he going to get a touchdown? Is he going to go, do whatever? And it kind of pushes collecting for me both ways in terms of retired guys and active guys.
Outside of Donald and Higbee, how you approach shrinking the sea to the other Rams cards you buy? Like, what kind of projects are you working on? Like, how do you approach the broader Rams collection you're building?
Yeah, so it's tough, but it's almost like a formula I've created to myself to be able to hunt after a lot of this high end RAM stuff, and it's something I debate back and forth on. It's like, do I think to myself, do I want one really great card of the top Rams players over the last however many years? Do I want like to just go after the top cards, regardless of who it is? And it's still something I debate to this day. I'm kind of in the point of collecting the RAM stuff where it's like if a 101 pops up and it's really cool, I'll grab it. If a gold Prizm PSA 10 pops up and it's cool, I'll grab it. Like I bought like a $30 Prizm gold PSA 10 of like some random Rams rookie last night because I'm like, it's so cheap and it's such a cool card to have. But it's definitely I don't want to say I've gotten picky with my buying, which is unfortunate because I do miss out on a lot of cool stuff. I think all cards are awesome, right? Like whether it's a $1 card or like a $10,000 card. Um, but I am trying to like consolidate my stuff into like I'd rather have 10 cards than 100 in my collection. So for me, it's about going after the top sets, top parallels, top players if I can get them. And again, it's like we're in a hobby where a lot of this stuff is very coveted. It's like collectors aren't, throwing out one of ones every single day. Like this stuff is tough to get. So I'm definitely I keep my eye open, and if something pops up that I really enjoy, I'll just go after it.
What how do you think about the Super Bowl win? Does that impact your collecting? Does that year, like, are you trying to acquire pieces or get cards of players from that year? How much did that change things for you?
I'd say it affected my fandom more than the card side of it. That was the first Super Bowl I witnessed in my lifetime where like my favorite team has won. So it was kind of a big turning point for me, and it was right around the time where I had sold that shield back in 2021, and I was acquiring a lot of new pieces. I'd say in terms of the Super Bowl itself, Panini's made some cards over the last few years, kind of commemorating like those moments. And I've gone after them. Some of them I haven't gotten, some of them I have. It slightly affects my collecting, but it's not to the point where I'm gonna like I change my entire collection just to kind of focus on I guess that era of stuff. Like I don't go after a 2021 card and be like, oh, this is the Super Bowl year card. Sure, that's like really cool, but again, it for me comes back to like getting the top cards of the top players in my favorite parallels.
Maybe as we round this out, I'm curious, maybe feedback for anyone else who's exploring team collecting, like through your experience and how you've collected and just evolved over the years. What sort of feedback would you have for anybody who's thinking about getting into team collecting?
I'd say it's don't make the mistake I made, and it's know what you want. For probably 2 to 3 years, I was buying like any RAM stuff I could find, whether it was like I was buying like dollar bin cards, and not to like put those down, but at the end of the day, and this is something a lot of other collectors told me a while ago, who had been in the space longer than I am, and it was go after the top cards. Don't mess around with like the not as rare stuff. Like go after the one of ones. Go after the pop ones. Go after the stuff that's going to be tough to find later down the road. And it is a big jump, especially for a new collector, whether it be the idea of getting a big card like that, whether it be financially getting a big card like that. But it's something that I wish I had done earlier on that a lot of people told me. They said, go for the top stuff. I kind of like was like, yeah, whatever. I'll just, I'll go after the cards I like. And it's definitely like, I sit here to this day with probably $210 cards that I'm just kind of like, I'd rather have, the one $2,000 card. And again, like it can't, we're in a hobby where obviously in 2020, everything kind of went up and inflated in prices. So you can't collect the same today as maybe you did 10 years ago. So it's definitely tough for myself and for a lot of other collectors making decisions on certain things to buy. You can't just, it's not easy to go out and about and acquire like, all the finites for a player like Aaron Donald, for example, right? So I mean, my top advice, and it was really something that was told me before again, is like go after the top cards first.
Good feedback. Awesome collection. You can follow him at Preston's Cards on Instagram. Are the Rams getting healthy anytime soon? Is there any light
Oh
at
my
the end of the
gosh.
tunnel? How are you feeling right now?
I hope so. I actually I see their practice facility on the way to work. So I see them practicing, and I keep looking out for Puka's number, for Cup's number. I'm just hoping. I mean, it's tough right now, but I'm hoping they're gonna bounce back. I trust in the team.
Awesome, man. Well, great conversation. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.